Forward this to the cloud. I want to go first to what our master was saying, because I think in his closing words about the day of Yah coming and what the days would be like leading up to that are very important, because he makes a connection with the days of Noah.
Yeah.
And we know what the days of Noah were about. We know that the days of Noah were days of violence, were days of wickedness, were days of darkness. But one thing that we overlook in that is what verse 38 says. It says, as they were in the days before the flood, eating and drinking. Man. Now here's where this connects to our Parashat, Tetze, when you go or when you take. It says they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage. Okay? This is a very, very overlooked sign. And we talked about these signs earlier as we read, dealing with these birds and getting rid of our egotism. And noticing that Yah will give us signs, but again, the cause and the effect is what we have to pay attention to. More importantly, how to respond to the effect. Shabbat shalom to you, Brother Daron. Just came in. But what I want to do is I want us to just discuss what we understand was taking place during the days of Noah. Okay, what were some of the practices that were common during the days of Noah as relates specifically to marrying and giving in marriage? Go ahead, Brother Akraya. Yes, sir.
Noticed they was taking other men's wives.
Okay.
And when you read Book of Jasher, they were taking other men's wives.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say that was a practice. It very much so was something that was common back then.
Yeah, but when I posted that message in the room, I didn't know we was gonna be speaking about that.
Interesting.
Interesting. That is the third point. So I'm just wondering, if that was something the Most High wanted us to speak about, but I had actually no idea that this was going to be the Torah portion. But one thing I did when I was looking at, was actually reading it last night. What were they doing in the days of Noah? And I noticed that they say the judges, was taking other men's wives, and then they started to mix animals and splice birds and stuff like that.
Yeah. They definitely were doing that as well. Let's do this. I want to go to the book of Jasher. Let's look at chapter 5. Brother Kim, go ahead while I'm looking for this, but go ahead. Yes, sir.
Yeah, one of the things that stood out to me, this is one of the reasons why our ancestors went into slavery. I think I read this once before. This is one of their first sins. I think it might have been you that told me this, or what was the sin that drove them into slavery the first time? And it said right there in chapter 6, Genesis chapter 6, right? And it said, and I got to read it out of the King James. I don't know what my Sefer is, but and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose, right? And the Most High said, my spirit, it shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, and his days shall be 120 years. But the thing that stood out to me, right, was the difference between these people. One was called the sons of God and the daughters of men, right? Now I don't know if this was a sign of, I hate to say interracial because there was no such thing as racial back then, from my understanding, but
right, it was cultural
or tribal. that these were daughters from different tribes. And but you notice that verse, that all that they had chosen. This is one of the sins that Solomon committed. You understand what I'm saying? He he saw a woman that he liked, hey, he went and got her. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
And we know that we were only supposed to marry within the tribe, within our prospective tribes. And so
Right.
that marrying part, I was wondering if that might be one of the things that was taking place. So.
That's a very great point that you bring up, and that's something that I really want to touch on briefly, because that is a very misunderstood passage, in that many people think that angels were literally sleeping with humans.
Oh, no.
A physical impossibility. You touched upon that last week very, very profoundly, and I thank you for that. But one of the common thoughts that are one of the common misinterpretations that are stated with that, they talk about the sons of Elohim or the sons of God were laying with the daughters of man. They don't understand that the sons of Elohim during those times were speaking of the generation of Jared. Okay, who was Jared? Jared was one of the sons of Seth. Okay, and it was the name. His name means to descend. It's very interesting. Jared's name is the root word for the word Jordan. Yared is the root word of Yardan, to mean to descend. It is the descender. And in his generation is when man descended into the valley. The sons of Elohim descended into the valley to lay with the daughters of man, which were the children of Cain. Okay, so you had the sons of Seth, the sons and the daughters of Seth going to lay and to marry, if you will, with the sons and daughters of Cain. The sons and daughters of Cain were in a valley, whereas the sons and daughters of Seth and Jared were on the mountaintop. And so when they descended, the word Nephilim comes into the equation now, right? They descended. They are the fallen ones, okay? And so that is a very profound point to raise in Genesis chapter 6. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Now, this is prior to the days of Noah, though. That was prior to the days of Noah. But when we look in the days of Noah, throw it up. Yeah, there's some of one of the others in there.
You cutting
but
out.
If you look at,
you cutting out.
I was talking to my oldest.
Oh, okay.
So when we look in the days of Noah, right? So Methuselah, verse 14, this is the book of Jasher, chapter 4, right? Methuselah named his son's son Noah. Methuselah was the grandfather of Noah, okay? Lamech is the father of Noah. So Methuselah, verse 14, calls his name Noah, saying the earth was in his days at rest and free from corruption. Lamech, his father, called his name Menachem.
You're breaking up really bad. You're breaking up really bad, so we can barely hear you.
It's still breaking up. Can you all hear me now?
We can hear you now.
So Lamech, his father, calls his name Menachem, saying, this one shall comfort us in our works in miserable toil in the earth which Elohim had cursed. Let me make this a little smaller. And the child grew up and was weaned and went in the ways of his father Methuselah, perfect and upright with Elohim. Now, verse 16 is where we start to see what's going on in the days of Noah. All the sons of men departed from the ways of Yah in those days as they multiplied upon the face of the earth with sons and daughters, and they taught one another their evil practices, and they continued sinning against Yah. And every man made unto himself a mighty one. So they started thinking that they were gods, and they started doing things in their own way, which was right in their own eyes. And they robbed and plundered every man his neighbor, as well as his relative, and they corrupted the earth, and the earth was filled with violence. And this is what you were just talking about, Aki Achraya. And their judges and rulers went to the daughters of men and took their wives by force from their husbands according to their choice. And the sons of men in those days took from the cattle of the earth, the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the air, and taught the mixture of animals of one species with one another, in order therewith to provoke Yah. And Elohim saw the whole earth, and it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its ways upon the earth, all men and all animals, right? And so when we read about what Yahushua is talking about in Matthew 24, we're seeing what you would call pretty much a recapitulation of that. You're seeing this being done again on the earth, okay? And so there's nothing new under the sun. And this is where the ego has to be trained. This is where the ego has to be tamed. This is where the beastly nature of man has to be managed. And this is where, again, the words which we speak become so important, because that is where our vows and our words become more substantial and more, what's the word I want to use? Elevating in our consciousness and in our actions. Akrai, I do see your hand, sir. Yes, sir.
I remember reading in the book of Adam and Eve, and also, if I'm not mistaken, during this time, there was a lot of music, a lot of alcohol, a lot of fornication. It's also going down, like you said, because that's when the sons of Jared began to leave that mountain, and they were told not to descend from that mountain, but they decided to go down with the daughters of Cain and the children of Cain, and they began to be polluted. And I'm just wondering if that would be considered like the same thing that's going on now with the nightlife, the clubbing.
Undeniable.
I remember when I used to go in a club, it was all about, who could get the most women, kind of like what the Imam was talking about, not looking for that woman that was on one accord, but you just looking for anyone that had the biggest butt or whatever. And I wonder, if that has something, if that's kind of like the same thing, even though in them days they were saying that the judges and the rulers was taken by force, but if you got a mouthpiece and you can spit game, I mean, and literally take that, take another man's wife or whatever. I wonder if that's
undeniable.
Kind of could be.
It's the same spirit. The thing is, the spirits across the age really don't change. Like even when you look post and pre-flood, pre and post-flood, you'll still see the same spirit that was in Cain that went on to Nimrod, right? And so what we're dealing with is truly spiritual warfare. And that spiritual warfare is based on a mindset. Where is the mind of the people? The mind of the people are on earthly matters where we'll see the earthly ways, the more uncivil ways. You'll see the more carnal ways and sinful nature start to proliferate. But if you see man's mind on more heavenly matters, on more exalted and lofty matters, righteousness, and again, it goes back to two things: egocentrism or cynicism, or selflessness and altruism. It comes down to those two principles. The more selfish and egotistical we become, the more violence, lust we will see on earth. The less selfless, the less selfish, and the more selfless we become and more concerned for our fellow man, the more you will see peace and righteousness proliferate. And so it just goes into showing us that, Yah in his wisdom demonstrated his love for humanity by giving us first and foremost, the Torah, and then his son as the example, first and foremost, but also as for the atoning offering. And so the more we can acclimate ourselves to Torah, the more order will come about as a result of us keeping the Torah and becoming less selfish. So undeniably, when we look at this is the second book of Adam and Eve, chapter 20, and it talks about this. Cain had gone down to the land of dark soil. So he's in Ham. He's in the land of Ham. Let's be clear about this. Okay, he's in Africa. okay? His children had multiplied. There was one of them whose name was Ganun, son of Lamech, the blind who slew Cain. So Lamech, what's so interesting when you look at these genealogies, and we're going to get to Deuteronomy, but when you look at these genealogies that exist between Cain and Adam after Seth, you'll see a lot of similar names here. You'll see some counterfeits. You'll see some shadow work taking place, okay? But as to Ganon, this is also Tubal Cain. This was Cain's son, Tubal Cain. It says Satan came into him in his childhood. This is why children have to be so aware of their mind state, of their spiritual development, because even in childhood, Satan can take up residence in your temple. And we have to be assured that we're occupied by Yah's spirit, because there's many spirits in this world that can take place in us, be it lust, be it greed, be it power, be it selfishness, be it anger, right? Be it depression. There's a lot of spirits that can enter into a child at a young age that we as parents particularly have to be aware of and address, pray over, rebuke, right? And cast out. But that means that we have to be authorized to do such as well. But what does this Tubal Cain or Ganun do? He makes trumpets, he makes horns, stringed instruments, cymbals and psalteries, lyres and harps and flutes. He's making music. How do you win over the mind of the youth? Same way it's being done today, music. She sent me a picture recently of Lil Nas X. This dude is winning over children. And he said literally in an interview, I don't give a F about your children. I don't give a F about your children, he said. And there's many little babies and little this and little that are spouting nonsense. And our children are giving their ear over to it. And guess what's happening? Spiritually, seeds are taking root. So when he played on these instruments, Satan came into the people who were gathering with him, so that from among them were heard beautiful and sweet sounds. Oh, it sounds so good. That's some dope. I love that track. It's beautiful. It's a dope song. And it ravished their heart. Then he gathered up companies upon companies to play on them. And when they played, it pleased well the children of Cain, who inflamed themselves with sin among themselves and burnt as with fire, while Satan inflamed their hearts one with another and increased lust among them. And this is giving over into marriage, marrying and giving into marriage. So these are fertility rites, right? Satan also taught Ganun to bring strong drink out of corn. And this Ganun used to bring together companies upon companies in drink houses, in bars, in clubs, and brought into their hands all manner of fruits and flowers, and they drank together, right? So he did this to multiply sin exceedingly. He acted with pride, with swag, with drip, what you want to call it, and taught the children of Cain to commit all manner of the grossest wickedness, which they knew not. They didn't even know that they were committing wickedness. And put them up to manifold doings, which they knew not before, right? So moving on, you go and you see here the children of Seth, who are dwelling on this mountain, caught wind of this music, right? They wandered and came by companies and stood on the top of the mountain to look at those below. That's what happens when we drop our eyes. This is what happens when we look down and not look up. And they did this a whole year. They gave their mind over for a year, contemplating lower vibrational thoughts. When at the end of that year, Ganun saw that they were being won over little by little. Attrition is so powerful. You don't have to convince somebody wholesale one episode or something's going to happen. You can convince someone little by little to fall away. When Satan entered into him and taught him to make dyeing suits for garments of diverse patterns, and made him understand how to dye crimson and purple and whatnot. Now we know crimson and purple from the book of Revelation is also a color that the beast from the sea and the beast from the wilderness wear. Yep, this is where abortions came from. There was another part that they were doing. They were making concoctions so that the women wouldn't lose their figure. That's what I was particularly looking for. That's what they were doing during the days of Noah. They were aborting their children so that the women would not lose their figure, right? You see abortions now because it's convenient. I don't want to have a child. Well, then abstain from having sex. I'm gonna go ahead. Yes, see my Leoria. Go ahead, please.
Something that you brought up about the figure aspect is when we look at what women go through now to make themselves a figure. You know, they will. I mean, this is a
rearrange their organs.
This is absolutely. It leaves you speechless when the amount of women going into it and losing their lives to have these procedures for the waist, changing their waist and all of it. When basically you could just maybe change your diet and exercise and have, you know, have a figure, wear the appropriate clothing or whatever, and you will have that figure.
Yep.
But yeah, that made me think of the augmenting of the body that's going on.
Right, the Brazilian butt lift, the breast, you know, implants, all these things that they're doing to counterfeit themselves. They're making themselves fake. They're Barbie dolls now, you know, and it's so unfortunate that people are so that caught up into an image, right? And we're worshiping images now. I mean, if you think about it, that's what's taking place. This is the worship of images. And it's sad. So continuing on, look at, so you're just talking about this, Imar. Verse, what verse is this? Verse 14, the sons of Cain who wrought all this and shone in beauty in gorgeous apparel, gathered together at the foot of the mountain in splendor with horns and gorgeous dresses and horse races, committing all manner of abominations. Meanwhile, the children of Seth, who were on the holy mountain, prayed and praised Elohim in the place of the host of angels who had fallen. Wherefore Elohim had called them angels, because he rejoiced over them greatly. Now, what we're seeing real quick is a contrast of pleasure. And what is overlooked by most people is the pleasure that we derive from serving Yah in spirit and truth, as opposed to the physical instant gratification pleasure of serving the flesh. And this is where we lose sight so much, and it's so easy, because things look good, because things appear to glitter and to be shiny and to have a fascinating appearance. We get caught up in that. This is just human nature, every generation. But things that do not capture your eye, things that take a little more effort to pay attention to, things that require you to do a little harder work and application and discipline, that's not as attractive. That's not as enticing. That's not as seemingly pleasing as it is to just do something that you know is going to make you feel good. So when you have the children of Seth on the mountain praising and praying to Yah, as opposed to the children of Cain who are in the valley doing whatever they wanted to do, what's more attractive? What side would you logically and naturally think you gravitate to? And these are real questions we have to ask ourselves, because this is the choice of life and death that we have to make, because the scripture tells us there's a way that seems right unto a man, which leads to death. And we know that things that start in the flesh, end of the flesh, and that's it. It's over. Once the flesh is done, it's done. But that's what we're trapped in bondage with, is pleasing our flesh. Any thoughts before we move on? Because that's a heavy one. That's a serious one, because we all have found ourselves, I'm sure that we can all say that we've sought out vanity. We've sought out, you know, as Imam Sharon was saying, the lust of the eye and the lust of the flesh. We've all done that. We've all pursued that, and the pride of life. We've all bowed to that. Brother Kim, yes, sir.
Yeah, that one thing that stood out to me was when he was talking about Cain, how Satan came into him when he was young. And when you were reading that, I remember going back and I was like, man, I'm a big hip hop fan. I used to be a real big hip hop fan. I was into rap music from a long time ago. I go all the way back to Curtis Blow and all the rest of them,
Okay.
And yeah, KRS-One, Africa Mambata and all them kind of folks, right? But I noticed something about, right, the music as it changed, right? It seemed like it got darker. My musical taste, right? I remember at one time it carried a social message, but not so much today. You understand? Or even when I was coming up, it became more sexual and sensual. It became more violent and vulgar. You understand what I'm saying? And it just took me deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper down that rabbit hole, to where most of the music I was listening to was all dark. People like Tupac Shakur and Bone Thugs and Harmony and all of these different type of what they call quote unquote artists, right? Because they do a very good job of painting a false picture or falsehood. You understand? But I noticed that, and even today, I can be going down the street and I might be listening to news. I try to keep my radio station on NPRN news or something of that nature. Just try to stay away from a lot of the local stations and stuff, right? But I noticed that, like, even if a song slides in, it automatically takes my mind back down that hole. Just the sound automatically ignites images of the past. You understand what I'm saying? And I remember, I don't know if y'all know who there's a couple on YouTube called Deborah and the Watchmen.
I know
You
you
ever heard of them? Deborah and the Watchmen. Sister Deborah, she does a show called Redirecting now, I think is what it's called, right? But they did a video on Satan's musical prophets, right? It's a powerful video. I think we all should check it out because it talks about Prince and Michael Jackson and how some of their songs were systematically, man, altering our perception of life, man. It was brainwashing is what they called it. But I found that was kind of funny, but I know that probably ain't got nothing to do with the message, but that's
it does though. But it does. It does, because you think about it, music and marriage go hand in hand. There's music in weddings, right? There's music in the marriage that play that, remind you of your love, that, keeps you, in tune.
Yeah.
But look at what music can do. It can change your ability to perceive time.
Yeah.
It can tap into primal fear. This is science speaking here. It can reduce seizures. Music can reduce, or I will even say induce seizures as well. It can do the exact opposite of everything we're reading here. If you can change your ability to perceive time, it could also, do the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It can make you a better communicator. It could also make you a worse communicator. It can make you stronger or weaker. It can boost or weaken your immune system. It can assist in repairing or even creating brain damage. It can make you smarter or less intelligent. It can evoke memories. It can help Parkinson's patients. Music can do all this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is from the University of Central Florida, right?
Yeah.
What music does to the mind, your brain on music. And so the executives understand the science of sound. The science of sound is so powerful. Have you ever seen those those experiments when they take the frequencies and they have like different things on a table, like let's say some grains or something like that, and then they turn the decibelage up or something like that?
Yeah.
And it forms geometric, sacred geometric patterns.
Yeah.
You ever seen that stuff?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like it's doing things like that to our body. And so when Ganun or Tubal Cain was dealing with music, he understood these things. Satan showed him the science of this. That's why I'm saying spirituality, it is science. They understand, our ancestors understood science very well. And they used it, right, to either influence people to keep or not keep the commandments. Because look at this, they no longer kept this commandment.
Right.
Nor held by the promise he made to their fathers. This is the sons of Seth. But they relaxed from their fasting and praying. There's something we can't do. And from the counsel of Jared, their father. And they kept on gathering together on the top of the mountain to look upon the children of Cain from morning until evening, and upon what they did, and upon their beautiful dresses and ornaments. So what we give our eyes to, what we give our ears to, what we give our minds to will eventually consume us.
Yeah.
This is why fasting and prayer is so important. This is why remaining innocent, and as we talked about last week, unblemished, perfect, is so important. The children of Cain looked up from below and saw the children of Seth standing in troops on the top of the mountain, and they called to them to come down. But the children of Seth said to them, we don't know the way. Why are you even engaging them in the first place? Then Ganun, the son of Lamech, heard them say they did not know the way, and he bethought himself how he might bring them down. Then Satan appeared to him by night, saying, there is no way for them to come down from the mountain on which they dwell. But when they come tomorrow, say to them, come ye to the western side of the mountain, very interesting side, the western side, right, where the sun goes down. Then you will find the way of a stream of water that comes down to the foot of the mountain between two hills. Come down that way to us. Then when it was day, Ganun blew the horns and beat the drums below the mountain as he was wont. The children of Seth heard it and came as they used to, right? So let's see what happens, right? Jared heard that they were going to go down. He knew that they would transgress his counsel. After this, 100 men of the children of Seth gathered together and said among themselves, let us go down to the children of Cain and see what they do. Enjoy ourselves with them. But Jared heard, when he heard this of 100 men, his soul was moved and his heart was grieved. He then arose with great fervor and stood in the midst of them and adjured them by the blood of Abel the just, let not one of you go down from this holy and pure mountain in which our fathers have ordered us to dwell. But when Jared saw that they did not receive his words, he said unto them, O my good and innocent and holy children, know that when you go down from this holy mountain, Elohim will not allow you to return again to it. He again adjured them, saying, I adjure you by the death of our father Adam, and by the blood of Abel, of Seth, of Enos, of Canaan, of Mahalalel, to hearken to me, and not to go down from this holy mountain. For the moment you leave it, you will be reft of life and of mercy. You will no longer be called, as it says in Genesis 6, the children of Elohim, or the sons of Elohim, but you will be called the children of the devil. But they would not hearken to his words. Enoch tried to reason with them. They didn't even listen to Enoch. Right? And so they went down and fell and gave themselves to marry the children and the sons and daughters of Seth. I'm sorry, of Cain. So here it is. They would not obey his counsel and they went down there. So this leads us to Deuteronomy 21. How does this lead us to Deuteronomy 21, verse 10? About dealing with strange people, dealing with a different culture, dealing with, a whole entirely different mindset. And so when we go, because believe it or not, the children of Cain were the enemies of the children of Seth and Jared. But here's the question: who influenced who in that scenario?
Children of Cain influenced the children of Seth.
Exactly. So in Deuteronomy 21, in this week's Parsha, who's influencing who in this context? Who's being the influencer here? Notice that word, you hear that word so common and so often today, social media influencer, right? Everybody has an influence, but who's being the influencer in this context of Deuteronomy 21?
Well, if they keep these commandments, it would be the ones that follow Yah.
Exactly. So what happens here right? When you go to fight out, again, when you go out to fight your enemies, Yah shall give you over into your hand, take them captive, and see among the captives a woman of fair form. You take delight in her, because again, that's the same thing that happened at the mountain. They saw these people, they were like, man, they look good. But what happens differently here is that they brought this woman into their house and influenced her. They made her go through her period of mourning, didn't touch her, didn't do anything until she was more acclimated to their way of life. And that's so important, because many times what ends up happening is we get compromised in the process of trying to, be righteous and think that we can change somebody. I think it was Imam Sharon talking about it in marriages. We think that we can change somebody, and we end up getting changed and compromised, and forgetting what Yah's commandments have been given to us for the purpose of keeping us in life. And so this is what Deuteronomy 10 through 14 is all about. And we can look at that spiritually as well. Of course, this is a literal thing that we can take it, yes, and that's one level and one layer. But we have to look at this in another light as well. And we can win over our enemies spiritually as well. There's some things that do have to be destroyed, and there's some things that we can actually redeem in the process. But we got to know and discern that which we can redeem and that which needs to be destroyed. Be it an individual, whether we just cut them off entirely, or whether or not we can actually go about the process of bringing them to the Most High.
Got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
When it says here, I'm kind of going up a little ahead. When it says, but aside, man, okay, this says, and it shall be in 14. And it says, and it shall be, if you are not pleased with her, then you shall let her go at her desire. But you do not sell her at all for silver. Do not treat her harshly, since ye have humbled her. But this part right here says, when a man has two wives, one loved and the other unloved, and they have borne him children, but the loved and the unloved, and the firstborn son is of her who is unloved, then it shall be on the day he makes his sons to inherit his possession, he is not allowed to treat the son of the beloved wife as firstborn in the face of the son of the unloved, who is truly the firstborn. Is that where I kind of put that in mind of Leah and Rachel? Am I on the right track there?
This is very much so related to all of that. And it even goes back before, it goes back to Ishmael and Isaac, right? It goes back to Cain and Abel. It goes back to all of that, because this is really experiential now.
Right.
And what Moshe is seeking to do is to rectify the situation where these family feuds ensue. Right. So he's like, let's just keep order. Keep order in the community. And so keep in mind, you're just reading about this man taking this wife, this army member taking a wife, and now he may have a second wife. And because he doesn't love her, let's say he sired a child with her, he's going to send her away. But that child who he had as the firstborn, you still are indebted to go about fulfilling your parental duties and to allow that child to receive its proper due.
Right. I think maybe I got the question wrong. Okay. It's just like the Most High called Israel his firstborn. Right? But we know that he's not his firstborn because, wait a minute. Because the Messiah is his firstborn, right?
No, Israel is the firstborn. The Messiah is the firstborn from the dead. Yahushua is the firstborn from the dead. His firstborn in in terms of physical child, is Israel, yes. That goes
Okay.
back to the book of Exodus. I want to say chapter 9.
This is a reminder.
Okay.
Kim Personal Group Meeting.
So the Mashiyach Yahushua is the firstborn. He is his uniquely begotten son. It's his son who he brought back from the grave.
Okay. Now the next question.
Okay.
Was that I forget what scripture that is in the New Testament where it says about being the child of the bondwoman and
It's
the
in
free
Galatians.
woman. That's in
Mhm.
Revelation.
Galatians.
Right? Is this also making reference to that? Because that sounds kind of similar to me.
I can see that.
Am I mistaken? I'm going down the wrong track?
In a sense, yes, because what's taking place in Galatians is you're dealing with bondage and freedom. This isn't so much inheritance that Galatians is talking about. Galatians is talking about our inheritance.
Okay.
I think this is it.
Galatians is talking about our inheritance.
No,
Oh,
talking
that
about bondage.
right.
Although it does quote interesting Isaiah, here it goes. It's been written that Abraham had two sons,
Yeah.
one by a female servant, the other by a free woman. But he who was of the female servant was born according to the flesh, and he of the free woman through promise. This is allegorical, but these are the two covenants. One indeed from Mount Sinai, which brings forth slavery, which is Hagar. But this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and corresponds to Yerushalayim, which now is and is in slavery with her children. But the Yerushalayim above is free, which is the mother of us all. For it has been written, rejoice, O barren, you who do not bear, break forth and shout, you who do not have birth pains, for the deserted one has many more children than she who has a husband. And we brothers, as Yitzhak was, are children of promise. But as he who has been born according to the flesh, then persecuted him born according to the spirit, so also now. But what does the scripture say? Cast out the female servant and her son, for the son of the female servant shall by no means be heir with the son of the free woman. Therefore, brothers, we are not children of the female servant, but of the free woman.
Right. And so I guess why I made that correlation is because when this right here is referring to Sarah, right? And Hagar, right?
Right.
Where Sarah was loved of Abraham and Hagar necessarily wasn't.
By more so by Sarah than Abraham. Abraham did love Hagar.
Right. But I guess I'm just stretching.
Well, no, not. I mean, in a sense, yes. In a sense, no. Because what's taking place is Hagar and Ishmael, although they received an inheritance because they were the firstborn, they didn't receive the double portion. Isaac received the double portion.
Got you. Okay. That's what stood out to me. But thank you for clearing that up for me.
No doubt.
I know I was stretching.
I mean, I can see it though because it references it. You know, it references it. But you know, when you're dealing with Galatians, this is about casting out the servant, you know, who is not of the promise. So that's what you're dealing with here. This is dealing. Let's kind of be clear. You're dealing with the state matters here. This is matters of estate. When you're in Deuteronomy 21, you're dealing with the legalities of estate and inheritance. And yes, it does have a spiritual connection, you know, but what is being done here is ordering the kingdom in its affairs. And it should apply on all levels, which is so deep. Because also you're dealing with the rebellious son in the next portion here, and you can see that with Ishmael as well. All this kind of goes, this harkens all back to Abraham, Hagar, Sarah, Isaac, and Ishmael. All this kind of harkens back to that. You can see the the seed of it, the impetus for this coming from that particular experience. But it's carried out almost in every generation. You can see it with Jacob and Esau, right? You can see it even between the 12 brothers somewhat. You see it with Yehoshua and Israel. So we can see these principles play out. You go back to Cain and Abel, you can see it as well. So this is an attempt to order the society, to order the kingdom in order for the blessings to, be experienced on all sides. So that is, I'm glad you brought that up though, because it does have a connection. Yes, it does have a connection. Though, let me actually clarify. It does have a very distinct connection with that. Sounds horrible. Anything else from chapter 21? This, of course, 22 and 23 are very powerful as relates to being cursed and hung on a tree. This is where even Yehoshua's death is questioned in terms of the effectiveness of his atonement and his offering, because he was a curse. He was hung on a tree. And notice last week, what was the Haftarah we read last week? Anybody remember what chapters we read from last week? Anybody recall the chapters that we read from Isaiah last week?
51,
and
12, and 52 to 52.
All the way
12.
through 52:12, right? This week we're reading what? Haftarah wise.
54.
So what do we skip? What are we skipping?
53.
We're entirely skipping over the suffering servant chapter, right? We've entirely skipped over in the reading Isaiah 53, which interestingly, so we go back and you read 21 verse 23, right? Let his body not remain overnight on the tree, for you shall certainly bury him in the same day. For he who is hanged is accursed of Elohim, right? It literally calls the man on the tree cursed. Well, it talks about, let's see. I don't know if it literally says he was cursed in this. Let me see if it says cursed. Cute, not cute, curse. No, curse isn't found in this chapter. But Elohim struck him, right? He bore our sicknesses. We reckon him as stricken, smitten by Elohim and afflicted, pierced for our transgressions, crushed for our crookedness. Chastisement of our peace was upon him. By his stripes we are healed, right? Yah has laid on him the crookedness of us all. So this is where, we look over this, but we look over this because I would say rabbinic Judaism, which is again the descendants of the Pharisees, didn't want to deal with this verse. They didn't want to deal with this particular chapter because it would point to something. Now, many people say, okay, yeah, this is all of Israel. No, this cannot be all of Israel. Because when we go back to the suffering servant, we talked about, we introduced the suffering servant, I believe in chapter 49, right? 49 establishes this servant. And definitely chapter 50 does. chapter 50. Here it is. This is where it picks up. Right? The master Yah opened my ear, and I was not rebellious, nor did I turn away. I gave my back to those who struck me, and my cheeks to those who plucked out the beard. I did not hide my face from humiliation and spitting. Right? So this is the introduction of this servant who suffers for the sake of Israel and becomes a curse, because even when you deal with Yahushua today in the Talmud, they completely disparage his name. But this is the one who became the curse for the redemption. As crazy as that may sound, he became the curse for the redemption of Israel. He bore Israel's sins. He took on the curse in order to overcome it and bear their sins. He's pretty much like, he's not the scapegoat. Let's be clear about that, because he did not go into the wilderness. He became the goat that was offered to Yah on the Day of Atonement. Of course, you have the goat that's sent to Azazel. Who was the goat sent to Azazel in the days of Mashiyach on Golgotha?
Barabbas.
Exactly. Which means son of the father, interestingly. Bar Abba means son of the father. So when you look at this, you look at Miriam. Miriam was considered a whore because of not being, quote unquote, a maiden prior to her marriage. Yahushua was considered a rebellious son, right? And he was hung on a tree, though not by Israel. So that's another important point to raise. Israel could not find him guilty of any transgression warranting capital punishment.
Excuse me, sir, that part, go back.
What verse?
Oh man, let me see. Go down when you were talking about the son, or go up. With
The rebellious son is down here, verse 18.
Verse 18. Oh man, there it is, 20. Oh man, it just stood out to me. This is in Deuteronomy, right? And you said that and Mashiyach was considered a rebellious son.
Yep.
Now check this out. This part right says, and shall say to the elders of the city, this son of ours is wayward and rebellious. Is he not listening? He is not listening to our voice. He is a gluttonous and a drunkard. Isn't that what they called him?
Yes, they did.
In a wine.
They called him a wine bibbler. A wine bibbler. Yep. Yep.
I'm like, oh man, there it is. Okay, yeah. Oh man,
yep.
He sinners.
Yep. But wow. They couldn't put him to death. They could not kill him.
Yeah. But when you were
Israel
saying that, I was like, oh man, there it is. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So 21 is very interesting. Okay. This entire portion is very interesting. So when we go to 22, we're dealing with, property. This is so important. Because again, this maintains the order of society. This keeps what we would call the beloved community intact. And everybody trustworthy and able to live in a society where there is no crime or really any injustice taking place. And that's the people's responsibility to ensure that that is the case. No one has the responsibility to carry out justice for someone else. Everyone has the responsibility to carry out justice themselves. It is not vicarious. It is not done representatively. It is done directly. And that's the challenge that we all have, to assure that the kingdom is manifest on earth as it is in heaven. This is our responsibility. This isn't something that was commanded just to a few people. This was commanded for everybody in the kingdom. And that's what we have to understand. We have to take this on. We have to put on Mashiyach ourselves every day. And here's a question: how do we put on Mashiyach? How do we put Messiah on every day?
Well, I would
What do we
say,
have to?
oh,
What do we have to clothe ourselves with?
the Torah, righteousness.
Exactly. Simple as that. It is as simple as that. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is as simple as keeping the commandments of Yah, doing what thus says Yah, and not doing what thus says Yah. You shall not do this, simple. We don't do it. You shall do this, simple. We shall do it. That's putting on Messiah. If you love me, keep my commandments.
Yeah.
If we want to be the bride of Messiah, right? If we want to be the beloved bride, if we want to be the one who the Father does not want to put away, because he's put Israel away 4 times already, really 5 times if you include Adam in the garden. He's put his bride away 5 times because of waywardness, because of infidelity, because of adultery. He put Adam out, really 6 times. He put Israel in the Mitzrayim, right? He brought Babylon in, put them out. Then came Persia, then came Greece, then came Rome, and we still dealing with Rome. We're on our 7th makeup with Yah. That's a lot. You could say every millennia since Israel has been around, we've been put away. Yah has given us a certificate of divorce because of our infidelity. This is very interesting. Verse 4, this just kind of hit me. When you see your brother's donkey or his ox fall down on the way, you shall not hide yourself from them. What does that harken back to? Help him raise them without fail. Where does hiding come from?
The garden.
Exactly. Adam, where are you?
Yeah.
I was afraid, so I hid.
You know, and that part right there plays, it goes into so much. And I know I've been guilty of this thing, you know, when you know, you get a sense that somebody is going to ask, I used to do this all the time. When I felt like somebody was about to ask me for a ride or about to ask me for some money, I would hide myself in my spirit, you know. I'm like, oh, here he comes. Let me get on, hurry up and get in my car and drive off, you know. I know he's about to ask me for some money, you know.
But here's a question. Were they your brother though?
At that time.
But even then, and see, this is where we have to really, we got to examine this matter, because everybody is not our brother. Everybody doesn't have our best interest in heart. Your brother is someone who would do for you what you would do for them.
Right, and not only that, like the Messiah said when he was on Calvary of Golgotha, you know, and he said, the man was it then when he says, who is my mother and who is my brother? But he that doeth the will of the Father.
Right there.
And my brother. So that's what we were kind of talking about earlier, about all Israel ain't Israel, you know.
Right, right. And they even delineating here, you know, you don't lend to your brother at interest, but you can lend to a foreigner at interest.
But
right?
Can a foreigner be in Israel? I mean, can he be Israel but be a foreigner? Is I guess it's the same thing. Like all Israel ain't Israel, or who do we consider our brother? Those who do the will of the Father, or even those who don't do the will of the Father?
No, those who do the will of the Father are proper Israel. You can be in Israel, but not of Israel. You see what I'm saying?
No.
So you can be in the state of Israel. You can be in the territory of Israel, but you may not be of the covenant. You may not be of the inheritance. You know what I'm saying? You won't receive the same treatment in the sense that we can lend interest. We can lend to you an interest. Yeah. We're not going to lend to our brothers an interest, right?
Yeah, and I think this, you know, I remember when me and Pastor Corey was fellowshipping together years ago, and one of the things that I had learned back then that I still try to hold to this very day is that you know, us being what we call Hebraic, we Hebraic men or Israel, you know, Israelites, coming into this knowledge and trying to uphold to these laws, statutes, commandments of Torah, right? That there's certain things that we're bound by. You know, we can do anything, but we can't do anything. You understand what I'm saying?
No
you
doubt.
know, some things we you know, and a lot of people don't understand why we do the things that we do. They don't even you know, well, why are you doing that? And that person, why are you doing that for that person? Or why are you doing that for that person? And they don't understand if that person is seeking the Most High, right? That I have to afford them every avenue to do that. You understand what I'm saying? But this was the one question, like I brought up to you earlier, you know, when we were talking about that marriage situation, the oaths that we make before, like Elder Sharon was talking about, you know, those things that we did and we didn't know no better. We just didn't know any better, right? Are we, once we come into the knowledge, are we still held to those oaths? You see what I'm saying? And so I guess this kind of still sticks out to that still speaks to that very same thing.
In a sense, it does. And this is where Yom Kippur is so powerful, like especially when we get into the liturgy. Okay. We'll get into the prayers for that day. There's the prayer again called Kol Nidre. Kol Nidre means all vows. These vows that we entered into unknowingly or without proper knowledge or even by coercion or duress or stress, they can be nullified. And it's like the portion we read in Numbers about the wife who made a vow rashly, whose husband can or father can step up and nullify that vow given their position with it. Right? So there are things that are able to be nullified in righteousness that, you know, can be done based on our ignorance or our rash manners, right? So, or under stress and duress, you know, like that's something that we can definitely say, you know, we were coerced in this matter. We were under duress and made this unfortunate decision, but that was not the desire of your heart.
Yeah.
Now, things that we do out of the desire of our heart, even though it be rash, we got to kind of wrestle with that. We got to kind of see how y'all can work with that. Especially if we engage the vow, if we engage the oath. Yeah. So that's the challenge, you know, and that's something that, again, with Brother Akraya bringing up marriage and divorce and remarriage, you know, that's a very sensitive subject. That's a very sensitive subject, you know, one that I would say would take a little more examination and study to truly understand.
Right. And I guess I was kind of going a little bit further with it when I was reading it, what y'all were discussing in the chat. And then even with this, right? I mean, you know, there were like, I remember, you know, like I said, I didn't always live, you know what I mean? But I used to, you know, dibble and dabble with drugs and things like that, you know, and I owed the guy a lot of money, you know, and I remember when I repented of that. You know what I'm saying? I just didn't do it no more. I just got a conviction in me, and you know, and I threw the dope or the drugs away, and because I couldn't get a hold to them. And for a long time, I felt bad for it because I'm like, man, I you know, I owe this dude a lot of money. That was a lot of drugs that I threw away, you know. But I started coming in. It was when I started coming into the knowledge, man. I started feeling convicted behind it. You understand what I'm saying? And so that's why I was asking, are you still held to those oaths? Do I need to go back and pay that debt? You understand what I'm saying? Even though it's a debt that was meant to kill our people. You know what I mean to you?
Right.
And so that's why I was asking that question. That's why one of the things that I thought about, you know, when y'all brought that up, because that always kind of bothered me in a lot of ways. And it still does. It, you know, I hate owing somebody that type of money. It's a lot of money too, you know, but what the money was used for, I mean, are you understanding what I'm saying? It went
undeniable.
Yeah, that was not conducive with the Most High. And so what am I to do with that?
Well, in the 7th year, there's a release of debt. So it's been over 7 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's been a long
Okay.
time.
So I mean, just and it has to just be a matter of awareness and education. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have to make sure that our people are aware of these principles.
Yeah.
We have to be aware of them first, of course. We got to carry out the righteous requirement,
Yeah.
and make sure that we're about our Father's business in spirit and in truth.
Yeah.
So
Because would the Most High want me to pay that type of money to somebody that's going to turn, because he's still in that lifestyle, you know what I mean? He's going to take the
right.
money and re-up and pump that poison right on the streets and in our communities. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's, you know, right. But that's what I was thinking about, sir. So.
Kevin was walking down the street.
Now that money, though, I would say that's something that not on those terms. No. Not to get that back. Not like that. So anything else though? Anything else from that principle that anybody want to touch on? Okay, so
One thing that stood out to me, why did all of a sudden he start talking about the young bird? I mean, he goes from all that, then start talking about if he finds a nest. When you come back to 6, when you come upon a bird's nest along the way in any tree or on the ground with young ones or eggs, with the mother sitting on the young or on the eggs, do not take the mother with the young. Let the mother go without fail and take the young for yourself, so that it might be well that you shall prolong your days. Then it goes back in when you build a house, new house, start going back. So what is the significance of that? Why jump to that? It seems like it doesn't fit.
Disconcerted, right? I mean, these are just prescriptions that allow for the principles of these matters to be the focus. So we can look at these again in literal context, but taking this again into the spiritual context. What we were reading about this morning was about the egocentricity, getting rid of egocentricity and understanding cause and effect, right?
Oh, okay.
So what we read this morning is that there's a prohibitive and a prescriptive commandment involved in this particular verse.
Okay.
And you're dealing with cause and effect, right? The reason for a matter and then the effect of the matter. And so he talks about how signs and how decisions are made and how they can impact us in so many different ways. And we have to see Yah's providence throughout it all. Okay, so this may on surface, again, the surface of this matter, yes, literally, this is how we should deal with procuring eggs, for eating or something like that. Like, don't just add insult to injury with the mother, right? But looking at this in a deeper sense, you're actually being more compassionate and dealing with a more humane approach to matters, right? So that you can just establish a decent ecology, a decent society. That's like also cooking the calf in the mother's milk. That's something we wouldn't do as well. So it seems like it's just out of place in ways, but at the same time, there's a principle involved that we have to extract that gets us to a deeper understanding of how we are to live our life. And it's dealing with compassion. It's dealing with being more righteous. It's dealing with being selfless. and not egocentric and self-centered. Doing what's right in our own eyes. Even like verse 5, because it goes from verse 5, a woman doesn't wear that which pertains to a man, nor does a man put on a woman's garment. So that's an abomination. Then it talks about a bird, right? So you're dealing with cause effect here. Like, if you're a man, you're a man. If you're a woman, you're a woman. Don't do that which is opposite of the natural course of events. So in nature, especially as being humans and being the image and likeness of Yah, if we're going to take eggs, we want to be more naturally compassionate for the mother. Because you look at that, let the mother go without fail and take the young for yourself, so that it might be well with you and that you shall prolong your days. So this is allowing the mother can have more eggs, and of course, it's still a life for her. She's going to be very protective of those eggs, but the mother will have an opportunity to have more eggs. If you take the mother and the eggs, now you're cutting off a whole line.
But more in a way, isn't that how species have just been destroyed when when you look at history as to how folks just came along and just shot up everything.
Right.
The males, the females, the babies, all of it just for sport.
Yep.
So now you have extinct species.
Yep. That's hard. Let's see. Let's see what this says. Let's deal with some commentary on this. So the Gemara raised an objection to Rabbi Yossi's ruling from another Barita or commentary. There's a mitzvah to dispatch a mother bird if one wishes to take eggs from her nest. This mitzvah applies only if the bird and eggs are ownerless. Doves of a dovecote and doves of an attic are subject to the obligation of dispatching the mother bird as they are ownerless. Nevertheless, they are subject to the prohibition of robbery due to a rabbinic ordination to maintain the ways of peace. Concluding the laws of prayer in this tractate, the Mishnah raises several prayer-related matters. The Mishnah speaks of certain invitations in the prayer formula that warrant the silencing of a communal prayer leader who attempts to introduce them in his prayers, as their content tends towards heresy. One who recites in the supplication, just as your mercy is extended to a bird's nest, as you have commanded us to send away the mother before taking her chicks or eggs, so to extend your mercy to us. And one who recites, may your name be mentioned with the good, or one who recites, we give thanks twice, they silence. So it's about mercy again, and even robbery. So if this is an ownerless nest, okay, yes. But if the nest has an owner, this is dealing with the principle of, making sure we're not robbing that which is not ours, and you're maintaining the ways of peace. So there's a principle behind this that is seen. That's what we always want to get to when we're dealing with Torah. What is the principle of the matter? And again, it's order, it's peace, it's compassion, it's mercy. There are times, however, though, when those things, of course, Ecclesiastes 3 tells us, when there is no mercy. There is a time for mercy, there is a time for justice, there's a time for strict justice, there's a time for compassionate mercy as well, though. And we just have to discern when those times are. So, verse 8, we need to set boundaries. We need to set some guardrails in our life. This is what it's talking about. When you build a new house, make a parapet for your roof so that you do not bring blood guilt on your house when one falls from it. You want to have boundaries in your life. You want to have guardrails. There's things that should assure that you or others don't go too far and injure yourself. Do we set those in our life? Right? When you come into a new level of consciousness, are there things that you have in place to protect your consciousness so that you don't go too far or you don't let others come too far? Or when you get into a new relationship or when you get into anything that's new, what guardrails do you have established? So not to bring blood guilt onto your house, right? These are things that we can examine within our life, right? Don't sow your seeds with different kinds of, don't sow your field with different kinds of seed. Be consistent, right? Who are you? When you're dealing with people, when you're going into the world and you're in the field of life, what seeds are you sowing? Right? What type of fruit are you bearing? Yes, Iman, go ahead.
Yes, you know, when you were speaking, it brought to mind about years ago, it was the first time I ever heard this. A sister presented, you know, needing to guard your home. Like, I think we were talking about like getting ready for Passover, but when she went even further, talking about the things in our homes, you know, over the years, you know, we may turn and look at something and say it that really doesn't belong here. You
Right.
know, when I first came into the truth, it was a lot of things that I had to like learn how to put them in the garbage. You know, learn how to get rid of them. And even like clothing, sometimes we would get together and be like, I'm not, you know, you don't wear these certain sort of things anymore. So I think it's those physical things in your home and the physical way that you are, like you said, who are you? You know, if we're just, especially when you have a place to worship, if folks are all dressed up in their garb on Shabbat, it's almost like Sunday. It could be. You know,
Right.
they're all in their garb on Shabbat, but if you run into them during the week and they're like dressed like the street, really, you know, that you wouldn't even know that they're Israel. You know, are we living that way? It doesn't
Right.
mean that we got to be totally, but I'm just saying the modesty piece or,
Right.
you know, are we careful about all of these aspects?
Crucial. Very important. Very important. Told out for that, Iman. That's very important. And this is what Yah calls us, you know, into set apartness for, and to be set apart. And set apartness sometimes, not sometimes, more times requires us to have those guardrails up. You think of, you know, traveling on an interstate and you're going over an overpass or something like that, they have guardrails there, right? And even when you're driving, period, there's lanes that people have to stay in for their safety. There's lines that people stay in. So these things are very applicable and principle to our life as well. So we're looking at, you know, sowing your vineyard with the same seed. Then you go into don't plow an ox and a donkey together. Don't have unequally yoked things take place in your life. Don't even wear garments of two different kinds, wool and linen. And we talked about this some months ago about how that lowers your vibration. This is a study. When you have these two fabrics together, it lowers your vibration and it even makes you more susceptible to sickness and sin. it was necessary for the Barita to mention that priests are obligated to fulfill this commandment, as it may enter your mind to say as follows: since it is written, you shall not wear diverse kinds, wool and linen together, you shall prepare yourself twisted cords upon the four corners of your covering. That's the tzitzit, of course. It is only one who is not permitted to wear diverse kinds who is obligated in the commandment of ritual fringes. But with regard to these priests, since diverse kinds are permitted for them when they perform the temple services, as the belt of the priestly vestment contains diverse kinds, they should not be obligated in the commandment of ritual fringes. Now, let's see here. Yeah, that's fine. I think this is where it's come from, this article here. A doctor named Heidi Yellen did a study on fabrics, and this was the conclusion. Thank you. The human body has a signature frequency of 100. And organic cotton is at 100. Therefore, you don't want to wear a garment under 100 that is lower than the frequency of the human body. A sickly, nearly dead person has a frequency of 15, and materials such as polyester, rayon, silk, and even spandex register at a 15. Science proves that any fabric worn that has a frequency less than 100, our bodies put a strain on us, which causes disease, inflammation, and other sicknesses. The only super fabrics are wool and linen, both measuring in at 5,000, which energizes the body and helps to fight disease. Okay, so we can see here there's even a scientific reason. Some things we may not understand from Yah, but some things are very scientifically decided. This book that Brother Kim gave me a while ago, The Mosaic Law in Light of Modern Science, lays out a lot of the reasons why Yah has prescribed and prohibited many commandments for us to keep. So there's a science to this. Okay, even these tassels, there's a science. You see things, they register in your mind. Okay. Any thoughts in that regard from anyone?
I guess I can say that cotton, since since I have my own personal summer that most of the sisters can understand, when I find that polyester and that I'm trying more so to just avoid it. I was trying to avoid it anyway, but then I noticed the difference of how I feel encumbered in that. It's not comfortable. And even with your sheets, I wish I had known this. And I think we spoke about this before, that we do need, like, say if a person is bedridden, we should have linen, actual linen sheets. They're very expensive, but they keep down from the skin from breaking down. And even our sheets, we should try to use cotton sheets and not polyester, because it doesn't breathe. It's uncomfortable.
Right.
I mean, if we think about it, if we just really think about it. So, but it's difficult to find, but if you search, you can kind of find more cottons.
That's powerful, Imam. That's powerful. Yeah. And these things, you know, they seem light, but they're very, very expanse in the overall, like, how could you say that, the overall perspective of our life in terms of ensuring that we're living a quality of life that is going to allow for us to be fruitful and multiply. That's the commandment. What Yah is doing is giving us prescriptions on how to be fruitful and multiply mentally, spiritually, mentally, and physically. So all the bases are covered. And it's so powerful. I mean, how little this stuff is, how seemingly, you know, these, what do they call it? The lesser things of the law, or the smaller parts of the law, building a house, a new house, and making a parapet for your roof, right? Don't take the mother with the eggs. Like those little things there seem trivial, but they go into the comprehensive fullness of ensuring that we have a kingdom that is righteous and that is set apart. The details. So they come back to marriage. And when a man takes a wife and goes into her and makes an accusation that she's not a virgin, okay? There is a huge matter that unfolds as a result of this, which either ends with the man still having her as his wife, or the woman. This does include the man being a virgin as well, though, too. But the woman being stoned if she indeed was not found to be a virgin. Why? Why would she be stoned if she was not found to be a virgin? And then even deeper, why would she be required to stay with this husband who made an accusation that she was not a virgin? So now you got this matter of an issue of trust in the household. How does that work on both ends of the spectrum?
So can
And
you
what is
repeat
the
that first
expectation?
part?
Let me one more time. And what is the expectation of the man in this society? But go ahead. I'm sorry. I digress. I relinquish.
Well,
Could you?
I think this the man on the side of the man, I guess he has to now respect the woman because he has gone out and made the accusation. So now he's been finding everything and he has to respect the woman. I guess in my mind, I don't see how that would be such a pleasant situation there.
Right.
But I think that we're seeing the illustration too of this vow or this, all of this stands over your feelings.
It does. It does.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge to bring that up.
Yes.
This covenant is not about emotions. Emotions are important, but it's not about how you feel.
Right,
Boy, if
because
we had learned that younger. Go ahead, Aki.
yeah, because when you look at it, you know, when he found, so you know, the moment once you find something unclean about a person, everything become unclean about him. So, you know, ain't no telling, you know, he probably said that and much more, you know, but that's one of the things you got to be careful with, you know, with a woman, you know, you just can't tell a woman anything because she'll never forget that. She'll always bring that up.
Right.
And another thing, with that false accusation, one of the things that kind of stood out to me about that is
You chopping up, my brother. Now you chopping a little bit.
Can you hear that? Can you hear me?
Is it my phone? I mean, is it my system? Can you all hear him clear, or is it choppy on your part too? Can you all hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I said one of the things about that false accusation, it wasn't just necessarily back then. It was that accusation just wasn't on her. I mean, that wasn't just her reputation that was involved. That was the honor of her father, the honor of her family. You understand what I'm saying? Because you know how people talk. not only that, you know what I mean, and because the children back then truly represented parents. You understand what I'm saying? And had to be very, very careful when we started, when men made those type of accusations, especially if that father had those tokens of virginity. You know what I mean? Say, wait a minute, man, you speaking against my daughter. And I already, listen, I got this token here saying that you lying, man. So, they had to be really, really careful of that. And then not only that, right? The thing, what I kind of liked about the way that men interacted with their wives and things back then, if you notice something, they've always said something about the love and the unlove, right? But you still wasn't able, even if you didn't love that woman, you was not allowed to just treat her like garbage. You understand what I'm saying? You still had to treat her with a sense of dignity. The community itself would not allow you to do that. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
You can just come up with some old reason to put somebody away because you saw Sally around the corner and her headdress is a lot prettier. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I kind of got from it.
That's huge. And I think what you raised is important about false witnessing, which is a commandment. You don't want to bear false witness. And now this woman may have to live with this man who is considered a false witness now. But the key is what? The key is the redemption. The key is about restoration. Everything is about repairing that which is broken. Because that's human nature. Human nature has the tendency to experience flaws, but our flaws can be corrected. Our flaws can be repaired. To be a part of that process, when you say I do, is to be a part of that process. For better, for worse, right? So these are things that we have to understand are a part of this dynamic. It's a very serious engagement. And this is what Yah expects for man and woman to do, to work out, to reflect the image of Yah. This is how Yah's image is born through families, through communities, through societies. I didn't think Yah was going to overcome that. We didn't. Yah helped us to. Yah allowed us to do so. And you've seen this in marriages where there's been infidelity. You've seen this in marriages where trust has been broken. Not encouraging it, but I'm saying it's happened. So those are grounds for divorce. But this is serious. This is about keeping the community set apart. Keeping the community pure. Any other thoughts from chapter 23 or 22?
I think the fact that it says they will stone them to death. I mean, that's like, it's interesting. I understand the purge, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
It was drastic.
Well, again, sexual sin can ruin a nation.
Mm-hmm.
We see that today. And so in order to preserve this set apart people, this holy nation, this kingdom of priests, we have to understand the gravity of sexuality if it is not contextualized. It is the ruining of a nation.
And that was the beginning of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Exactly. If we are led by our desires, we become purely instinctual, we will stop at nothing, right? So you have to gain control of your nature, particularly the desire for lust, your appetite, your desire, because if your desires are unbridled, anything goes. And this is why Yah had commanded Israel to control that aspect. And if you're going to have that aspect on fire, marry. Marry. And build a parapet around your house spiritually. So you can look at that from that as well. But now when we look at marriage, you got swingings, you got people who swing, you got people who do all kinds of things, they partner swap. There's no bounds whatsoever, but these are all old fertility rites that Israel, that Yah's people are forbidden to engage in. Why? Because again, we're set apart. We demonstrate the righteousness of Yah. We demonstrate the purity of holiness. But what's so interesting, I'm gonna go to this next chapter, and it may be the 24th chapter. The word for cult prostitute, which Israel is forbidden for the men or the women to be, is the same word for being set apart. Let's look at this. Deuteronomy 23:17. Trip off of this. And we covered this before. Verse 17. The word for, wow. Even the word for whore in Hebrew is called kedishah. Kedishah, female prostitute, but it comes from the word kadosh. And kadosh means, in this context, kadesh means a sodomite or unclean. But it comes from the word 6942, kadosh, which means to consecrate, to sanctify, to set apart, to be holy. But it's how it's said. It's how you live. What are you consecrated for? Are you consecrated for prostitution? Or are you consecrated for set apartness and holiness? Right? None of the daughters of Israel should be a whore or a cult prostitute, nor any of the sons of Israel should be a cult prostitute or a whore. We shouldn't be male whores at all. And this is so contrary to the way that many of us have been raised and taught in society. But now again, as we were talking about in WhatsApp, we got to make sure that we're raising the next generation to understand what life is about, what life is about, and how to live life, and how to preserve yourself and prepare to experience pleasure in the right context. I'm sure many of us can say none of us would be as broken as we've been and had to go through the healing that we had to go through if we had just waited. If we'd have just found a different outlet. As opposed to engage in sexual sin. Many of us would be a wholly different person. And yeah, our testimony makes us a part of who we are, but at the same time, who could we have really been if Yah had preserved, if we had allowed Yah to preserve us?
Something to think about.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Ima.
No, I was just saying something to think about. It really is, because that's something that, I ain't gonna say everybody, but a lot of us jump into it. Lust is a monster.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't always know how to control it. And there's really a lot of different things that cause people to have those feelings, and where you just feel like you just can't help yourself. And we all adults on here. I hope ain't no children. Let me be. Well, you know what I mean. Just just have to get it together and know that if that's how it was, let it not be no more.
Right. Any other thoughts? So even to the point when you look at this, right? Leading up to verse 17, starting at verse 10, even verse 9. When the army goes out against your enemies, you shall guard yourself from every evil matter. When there's a man among you who is not clean because of an emission in the night, speaking particularly of semen, he shall go outside the camp. Let him not come into the midst of the camp, right? When it shall be when evening comes, he bathes in water. When the sun sets, let him go hum back into the midst of the camp. The purpose of this is verse 14, right? For Yah your Elohim walks in the midst of your camp to deliver you and give your enemies over to you. Therefore, your camp shall be set apart so that he does not see unclean matter among you and shall turn away from you. We are to remain clean. We are to remain set apart. And these things are what defile us. These things are what render us unclean. When blood is outside the body, it is considered unclean. When semen or any fluid that is found within us has its way outside of our body, it renders us unclean. And so we have to guard ourselves, remain clean. This includes people. Now, what's so interesting about verse 4? Sorry, verse 3. Keep in mind, this is the time of Moses. It's not the time of Obed or Boaz, but it says, the Moabite does not enter the assembly of Yah. Does that hold true? Both of them?
Ruth
No,
was
no,
a
it doesn't. No,
Moabite,
it doesn't.
right?
Right. It doesn't hold true. What did you say, Imam Sharon?
I said, wasn't Ruth a Moabite?
Yes, she was. So what makes
And
this? Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. What's that? I think that's in either Deuteronomy or Numbers where it says, "Thou shalt not abhor an Edomite or Moabite." Did it say Moabite for their
Right
children?
here.
For the children, yeah. For their children that are born of them, and they're shipped to the third generation. They can't enter into the kingdom until their third generation, right?
From this, right.
So now what that third generation is always been a toss-up to me. I don't know what that means. 3 times removed, meaning that if do they have to reintroduce that Israelite way of thinking and our culture and the blood back in? Or I mean, is that blood or is that spirit?
That's blood.
That's blood. So that means they have to, that Moabite blood has to be purged out. They have to be breaded out, correct?
Well,
Then other ways, how if it's the blood, then that blood can only be purified by Israelite blood 3 times out. It's just like if you take a mixed shepherd and bulldog, and you want to bring the shepherd back in. I hate to use that analogy, right? But if you got to take the mixed breed dog and mix it with a full breed shepherd, it start to reintroduce that shepherd blood back into the bloodline. And
no,
eventually,
that's pedigree. That's pedigree.
Pedigree.
That's essential.
But right. And so that's what I was asking. Is that spirit or is that flesh? Is that blood? And if it's blood, then the only way that they can enter in is if they have to be rebreaded back in. Is that not correct?
Not necessarily, because Ruth remained a Moabite, but it was her spirit that allowed for her to enter into the assembly. Right?
But
When you go,
was she a Moabite by blood, or was she a Moabite by the place that she lived?
I believe by blood. Because she told Naomi, your people are my people. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So she was dealing with a complete conversion as opposed to
But
dealing
wasn't she
with
was
just,
married at the time? With her husband
she was
just died or
married
something?
to a Yahudi. She was married to someone from the tribe of Judah.
So
Right?
do that make her back Israel then by doing that?
That makes it back Israel, wouldn't it? Blood by blood, because of the
In a
blood
sense.
covenant.
In a sense, yes, but she was still of Moab. They took 2 wives of the women of Moab, right? The name of one was Orpah, the name of the other was Ruth. Machlon and Kilion died, so the woman was bereaved of her 2 sons. She rose up, her daughters-in-law, and with her daughters-in-law returned to the field from the fields of Moab, for she had heard in the fields of Moab that Yah had visited his people in giving them bread. So there was a famine in the land. This is why they moved to Moab. So she left the place where she was and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Yehudah. Naomi said to her 2 daughters, go, return each to your mother's house. Yah shows kindness to you as you have shown kindness to the dead for me. Yah grant that you find rest each in the house of your husband. And she kissed them and lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, no, we shall go back with you to your people. But Naomi said, go back, my daughters, why go with me? Have I still sons in my womb, so on and so forth. But this is where Ruth goes on, because Orpah went back, Orpah left, right? But Ruth clung to her. This is the key right here. Ruth clung to her, right? This is what we are to do with Yah. She said, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to your people and her mighty ones, and her mighty ones, right? She went back to her gods. Go back, follow your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, do not urge me to leave you or to go back from following after you. For wherever you go, I go. Wherever you stop, I stop over. Your people is my people. Your Elohim is my Elohim. That's what made Ruth a Yahudi. Remember, a Yahudi is not one who is so according to the flesh, but according to the spirit. Okay? Ima Sharon, yes, ma'am. I see your hand.
Yeah, Romans, the 2nd chapter in Romans, and this is an
There you go.
interesting scripture, Romans 2. And I would start up at 27 to 29. And it, and I don't, I remember they had a lot of controversy when I was in the when I was going to the temple about this scripture. I don't see controversy with it, but there's a lot of people that have had controversy with this scripture, because they say, well, I'm there. That's who I am. I am the Jew. But Moray, would you read it, please? It's would you start at 2 and 27 down to 29?
Yes, ma'am.
For me,
It reads as
please.
follows. The uncircumcised by nature, who perfects the Torah, shall judge you who, notwithstanding letter and circumcision, are a transgressor of the Torah. For he is not a Yahudi who is so outwardly, neither is circumcision that which is outward in the flesh. But a Yahudi is he who is so inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart, in spirit, not literally, whose praise is not from men, but from Elohim.
Well, that's people. That's when that's from that mixed multitude. Whoever desire. It's like whosoever will. It depends
Right.
what your heart is like. Whether or not, you don't have to necessarily. I mean, people want to say it's got to be the skin color, but it ain't like that. I mean, according to what I'm reading, that's how my understanding. And if I'm wrong, Moray, please, explain it to us, please.
I agree. When you read the book of Acts and you start seeing the Gentiles come into the fold, many will say, well, those are, northern tribe Israelites who were in the diaspora. No, they weren't. These were literally Greeks and other people, right? But it says that he who fears Elohim and works righteousness can become a member of the covenant in every nation. How do
But
you
they don't like
describe
people don't
the
want
mixed
to hear
multitude
that
in
though.
Revelation 7?
No, people don't want to hear that.
Unfortunately not. But these are the realities that we deal with, especially
Hallelujah.
when you deal with verse 7. Because we hate Esau. Israel today hates some Esau, and they want to say Esau is everybody but who Esau is. I won't really get into that. But the commandment tells us not to loathe an Edomite. That's a problem for many Israelites. Don't hate Esau. What? You know what Esau did to us? So, what's the Torah say?
The Torah says I should not abhor an Edomite, right?
Mhm.
Because of the children that are born of. Now, this is one that has always been a struggle for me, right? Because I'm from the South. And I know that, you know, and I've not only heard, right, but I've seen. And I, you know, biblically speaking, I do understand this one thing, right? Because the Most High said, I have sheep that are not of this fold, right? That lets me know that he got some folks other places that I'm unaware of. And he also said that I show mercy to thousands who I show mercy to, right? And condemn who I want to condemn. You don't know who I'm going to let in here and who I won't. But at the same time, right, I wrestle with our enemies. And I guess the one thing that you kind of helped clear up since I've been studying with you all was that our enemies, and correct me if I'm wrong, but our enemies, and I kind of was thinking about this today, are the ones who walk contrary to the Torah, right?
Yes, sir.
But I've been praying to get that spirit out of me because I still, brother, I still, you know, hey, you know what I mean? You know, they hung my cousin. They hung my cousin down in Greenville, Texas, when I was about 12 years old. Hung him from the courthouse banister, man. So down in Greenville, you know what I mean? So, you know, and I remember riding down, going to my father's hometown in Nacogdoches, Texas, and where there was a sign that read, "If you can read, nigga, run. If you can't, run anyway." You know, this highway is maintained by the local chapter of the Ku Klux Klan. Yeah, and this sign stayed up there. They just took the sign down in 2002.
Wow.
You know, so I you know, and I remember Klan rallies out in front of my high school and things like that. You know what I'm saying? And so seeing a lot of these things and walking into school and seeing dummies hung from the goalposts of the school,
Wow.
you know, yeah. So I grew up with that type of stuff. You understand what I'm saying? So that's kind of hard to kind of get out of my mind. But I've been praying that he you know, yeah. I pray my
Well, you're not
strength.
called to love your enemies like that. You know, be aware of that.
Yeah.
You know, because we have to understand, yeah, we pray for our enemies, but, you know, and we do love them in the sense that we pray for their repentance. But if they touch us, you know what I'm saying? There's no mercy. There's no mercy. So we have to be wise and harmless to those who are harmless. But to those who are seeking to do us harm, we're not bound to lay our life down like that. Nope. So yeah, it's deep. It's deep how Yah has commanded this matter. We have to be wise and understand how to walk, you know, in life, for life, with life. Anything else from 23? Anybody have anything from 23? Okay, kind of just going through this a little bit. In 24, we deal with the more marriage principles again. We're dealing with divorce and not taking back a woman that you put away in divorce, especially if she went and became another man's woman. And it's just a matter of keeping set apart again. You know, let me take a look at what the Sephariah says, 20, chapter 20, what? '24. You got something wrong? So first of all, let's just deal with the idea of divorce. What is the purpose of divorce? Why does Yah hate divorce?
Well, I guess because of how Yeshua stated that out of the hardness of man's heart, you know, a lot of the examples we see are always because the man did not find favor, you know, did not like, hated, disliked the woman. Besides the adulterous side of it. But a lot of it, very often you see he loved one, he didn't love the other one. It's the hardness of man's heart.
Right. Right. Akraya, yes, sir.
I think it's because our people divorce him. You know, because by asking for another king, and not only when we ask for another king, if I'm not mistaken, it was the same day that we asked for another king, and we got Saul. If I'm not mistaken, it was the same day we got the Torah in Exodus, the 19th chapter. So it almost seemed like the same day that he consecrated us when he sprinkled the blood was the same day that, you know, like I said, we divorced him to be, you know, to get a king like the other nation.
Rejection. Now, there's things that have to be naturally rejected, but when it comes to things that Yah has brought together, this is why it says, what Yah has brought together, let no man tear asunder. But the key again is to understand who Yah has given us for that marriage. You know, some people call it soulmate, some people call them twin flames, some people call them whatever. But the spouse that we are to have in life is supposed to be one that Yah has also given us. Right? Yah has allowed for us to experience this oneness with this person, not just based on appearance, not just based on monetary status, not just based on things that, you know, are physically there, but it has to be the spiritual really first and the mental. Because everything else, this is what Yah tells us, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and all its righteousness, so those things can be added to us. Our spouses, first and foremost, are spiritual helpmate. First and foremost, they're given just like the Holy Spirit is given to lead us into all truth. First and foremost, to hold us accountable to Yah's standard of righteousness. That's what the spouse is for first. The same office of advocate, of helpmate, paraclete, Azer, the word in Hebrew is there. When we go to Genesis what, 2? And we look at this word to be a helper. This word is there, is about strengthening you. So it is there right here. Your help, your succor, one who helps, an aid, right? So when we look up this word in the Greek, we get the same principle. But go ahead, Ima Sharon.
Okay, well, when looking at this, when Moshe said that they could divorce, and what he said, because he had found some uncleanness. Well, that uncleanness could be, I don't like the way you cook. I don't like the way you dress. I don't like the way you do whatever. And this is what this is what Moshe did he allowed it to happen. But one thing about what Yahshua did, he come back and said, save for fornication. You can't do this. You just can't divorce your wife because you don't like the way she look, or she didn't say good morning to you, or whatever. You don't like the way she cooked biscuits, whatever. And you can't do that. And so he said, save for fornication. So it was looking like Yahshua was, putting it in place. He knew it might happen, but you just can't do it because you want to. And I think that's how a lot of people do. They get into, and this today, they get into, bringing it down to the day. They get into certain situations and circumstances. I don't like you no more.
Right.
I don't like the way you cook. I don't like the way you dress. I don't like the way you wear your hair. Oh, my husband, he lost his hair, so I'm gone. Those are the things that are so just crazy to do, but people do them every single day. A lot of times when people say, well, why are you getting it? Well, I could just get a divorce. That's just how it don't mean anything. Because, and I think I talking about it earlier, but you don't have a covenant relationship. That same covenant relationship that you got to have with Yah, you have to have it with your spouse. We take vows, sure. Most of them to say the same thing. I love you, and to death do us part, until you try to hurt them or knock them out and kill them and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, a covenant relationship, how you gonna break that? Really, if both of you do it together, how you gonna break that? You're gonna work that out. And it's just the way Yah has, because it's not going to be so, I can't think of what the name of that, I want to say it start with a K, that when people in the Hebrew take these, take the covenant, they take that covenant. And if y'all never read it, you need to read it. When I tell you it's bad, you will think twice before you just jump up and marry somebody because you like the way they look. Because you really, that it binds you up and lets you know that you just can't just jump up and leave somebody because you don't like the way they look. It's a wonderful thing, but it's tight, but it's right. Y'all never read. Y'all need to look into it, to look at it and see the things. I mean, it even come down to the water. If you ain't living near the water, it is. It is bad. And then if you call yourself trying to get rid of, you want to get you another wife, you better make sure you can take care of two. You just can't throw her out in the street and think that you can not have to take care of her and the children. So you may have to get another job and when you think about, if you really take that covenant serious, you try to work it out.
All the principles that Yah has carried out himself ought to be reflective in the community. from the body, from the head to the body. Yep. We're wrapping up. But marriage is a very, very sacred and holy order in Israel. And what this portion, when you go out, Tetze is seeking to establish is the understanding of this particular order and how it is to be taken with all seriousness, with all life, with all intention to guard and to keep in that realm of holiness and sacredness. And it's something that we haven't done. I've saw a statistic recently, though, particularly that in the melanated community, that there's an increase of marriage in two-family households in this past decade, I believe. So there's a resurgence of consciousness that is coming into being, right? And as one who has not allowed that order to truly manifest consistently in my world, you know, these are things that I have to take into account and look at myself and examine myself and ask, you know, what can I do now to assure that I am prepared for that, if that's what Yah has for me, right? And so now that that circumstance is here, this is just self-examination, continuous self-examination, you know, continuous growth and development, and breaking any and all the patterns that were there before that did not allow for those relationships to be established. But again, it's also recognizing whether or not Yah had called those relationships to be. Even with fruit of the relationship. Because I know I put myself before Yah on many occasions. So everything now requires to be more circumspect and to be more Torah-centered, truly, to be more led by Torah, which is spirit, which is spirit. Yes, Iman.
Well, I guess I had two questions. My one question is, in relation to what Akhraya posted earlier, and it got us all to thinking, surely, how can, I think you've hit on it, how can a couple, or how can we move forward from where we are today, wherever we are, you know, if there's someone, just like you said, you have to examine yourself, and how can we, as you know, like a family here, you know, just move forward for anyone that wants to, you know, be married but find themselves in these situations. Is a as Ima talked about the ketubah, is that a good tool? And I guess Ima could probably speak on it, because I remember years ago she had to research this, you know. How can we move forward? Can we move forward no matter where we've been? Because I read something and it said, say for instance, it said that your spouse had to be dead or whatever, or however. But on the spiritual sense, are you really separated from that person in your spiritual sense? Are you connected, or are you not connected? Have you disconnected from that. That was just somewhat of a spiritual sense there.
That's a great question.
And that was one question. Another thing, I just wanted to make a statement about chapter 24, and that the things that happen to us, the things that happen to us 24 and 25 as people in captivity, it's like these folks say they read the scripture, but look at all of this about the 40 stripes, about not putting a poor person to peril, all of this. It just made me wonder, how could they do us like that, But yeah, the first thing, if you could have some words of wisdom on how we balance what we're learning to our life today.
Right. And that goes back to the circumcision of the heart matter. Everything that we do with Yah has to be done in a renewed sense. And so the more we're able to come to our right mind, the more we're able to be renewed in Yah and to live life, again, not attached to the former lives that we had lived, in our darkness, in our ignorance, in our lust even, right? We're able to make redemption. There's able to be atonement. And I would say also there has to be some atoning works that have to be done, with those prior relationships as well, in the sense that you made a very great point, that you're rightly separated from it, that you're rightly, you're in order and taking care of any lives that you created, of course, but spiritually you have, moved to a place where that is not an influence in your life, and you're not attached to that, even though, those soul ties are so real, but you've allowed those ties to become undone, right? You have to move forward to the degree that you're not allowing the energy even from that relationship to be attached to you to that degree. And it's a challenge. We have to really rise above the natural side of ourselves to go to the spiritual reality and rebirth, the spiritual reality of rebirth within, and that's where we have to get in order to make these transitions clean as we can. And the beauty of the Torah, though, is that it just gives us parameters by which we're able to create these new realities. But the ketubah, you mentioned the ketubah. The ketubah is an excellent instrument in tuning marriage and keeping marriage on track. And it's not something that is just art. It's something that should be visited regularly, right? Our vows are something that we should visit regularly. And that's something that we may not do, because by the time we have our first argument in a relationship, what vows? There are no vows now, because now we're just going by how we feel. But if we refer back to those vows, if we keep in mind, I don't know why you would do that when you have trouble. But when we revisit those vows and renew those vows, even monthly, and it doesn't have to be like a ceremony. You don't have to do that ceremoniously. It's something that you do within your heart to remind yourself of what your responsibility is in this new life that you have created. And so we have to really understand what the purpose of marriage is too. And I think that's, again, a huge thing, what the grounds and the purpose is, what the grounds are and what the purpose is, so that we can be successful. Because, the failure of anything derives from ignorance, derives from not knowing how to do what needs to be done. And not only not knowing, also not caring. So to go beyond that, we have to, again, attune our hearts, attune our minds, attune our will and our desire, so that we can fulfill the purpose. And this isn't anything. This is across the board. So I hope that kind of answers it there. There's a lot of different commentary on this particular matter here of taking back a wife after she's been divorced, after you've, divorced her and gotten rid of her. And whether or not you bring her back. So there's a lot of different commentary on that there. This is a great tool if you haven't been to Sefaria.org. They have a lot of good commentary, culturally speaking, from Talmud to, they got all kinds of tools that we can use with this here. Mishnahs, just a whole bunch of different tools that we can exercise to get understanding with. Brother Kim, yes, sir.
Sorry, I had to make a run right quick. But when you were talking about that, taking a wife back after she has been defiled, right? But isn't that the same thing? I might have missed out on something. You probably have already answered this question. But isn't that the same thing that the Most High did? Because we were always running around whoring after other gods and things, and playing the harlot and carrying on and things like that, being defiled. And like you said earlier, that he would cast us off, put us away. But he was, now I don't know if he ever brought us back, but he put us away.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And he's going to reconcile us back to him in that final day. You understand what I'm saying? And the thing that we see as Israel, that's what the scripture is, not Israel a homeborn slave, and those being times that he so-called put Israel away. What if he put Israel away one time and we never came back to him? Because every time you turn around, we were always being stiff-necked and rebellious. We never really fully came back to him. And maybe it's in those latter days that he's going to reconcile his bride back to him, but
right.
And if I'm looking at it from how we implement these things into our everyday life, that one scripture where it says, I know how you dwelt treacherously with the wife of your youth. And I know that that's really speaking of the Torah, right? Speaking of the law, right? But if we were to put it in a actual sense or a livable way, I guess, if that's correct grammar, but you know what I'm saying, or how we treat our wives today, and that's like what the Mashiyach said, that Moses gave you a letter of divorce because of the hardness of your heart, the way that we were treating my wives. Maybe we weren't supposed, because sometimes, my mind is scattered, but I'm gonna bring it back in. Sometimes it's just like Brother Akbar was mentioned earlier, right? That it ain't about your feelings, but maybe that was Elder Sharon, but it's not really about feelings. Marriage really is not about feeling. It might have been you that said that, but it's not about feeling. Even though you should have some emotional tie to your spouse or to your wife, but it's really not about feeling. Because if you look back how the Messiah said, right? Saul said, husbands love your wife as Christ loved the church, that he gave his life for it. That's not really, that's really that's more than a feeling. You understand what I'm saying? That's more than a feeling right there. It really doesn't. I think a lot of times we because marriage and relationships have become, quote unquote, I hate this word, romanticized, right? I don't know, they used to say you're not romantic. Well, I used to tell them I'm not from Rome. But anyway, but it's an obligation. You make a conscious decision. Yes. Right? If you make a conscious decision to love somebody, right, and that person understands that it's a conscious decision that this man or woman is making to love, it really isn't about feeling more so. And you hear people say it's a business. Well,
Yep.
if we
In a
are,
way.
yeah, if we are to be the Messiah on earth, he said he came to do his father's what?
Business. Yep.
So I guess it is a business. You understand what
Right.
I'm saying? So I guess we have to entreat our wives like a business. I mean, if we had a business, you know, if being business minded or oriented, you know, you're going to do everything you can to make sure that that business is what? Successful.
Yes.
You know, and so I think a lot of times brothers miss that mark. You understand what I'm saying?
Undeniably.
You know,
Undeniably.
yeah, they so quick to look at the physical, like the elder was saying earlier, that lust of the eye. You understand?
And emotionally.
And emotionally, you know, but we fail to look at them as a business in a way. You know what I'm saying? So
As a partner, you know, and that's
As a
the
partner,
thing.
yeah.
We have to understand, Yah took the woman from the rib of a man, the side of it, right? Not from the back of the man. So a woman is the helper, is the advocate, is the core of a man. And the man is the same for the woman. You know, now there is a order in that.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, there's still equity involved. And that's what we have to understand. There's still equity and egalitarianism that is involved in this.
Right. You know,
Ima Sharon, I did see your hand, but what you do, was that your thought, brothers?
Yeah, that was my thought. I'm gonna leave it at that. And I see the elder got her hand up, so I'm gonna yield the floor to her.
Hallelujah.
I just want to say, the Romans, the 11th chapter, certainly talks about, and he says, and I'm not going to read all of it because it is a chapter, whole chapter. Yah is really doing a lot of talking here, but he just say, "I then has Elohim cast away his people? Certainly not. But I am also an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin." He's not going to do that, because when he go, you know, when you go back over for the over in like 11:33, 32 on down, he lets you know, you are mine. I got you from the beginning. You were mine from the beginning. How is he gonna cast you off? He's not gonna do that. You know, now you can, it's talked about some of the branches being broke off and stuff like that, but don't think he can't put you back. You know,
No.
I'm just saying it, you know, I think you know, look at chapter 11, Romans chapter 11. It really explains a lot about what we was just talking about.
Good word, Ima. Told off for chapter 11. And I was looking at Hosea 2, but Romans 11 does provide a great explanation for that matter as well. But even in our faithlessness, you know, what Yah cannot do is be unfaithful himself or itself. Yah has to remain faithful to the covenant that Yah made. So that's something that, you know, Yah will continue to do despite how we've done in the past. Yah will always be faithful.
That's what he said in 11. He's faithful to his covenant. He talked about the covenant he had with Israel. But he ain't breaking. You might try to break it, but he's not going to.
Exactly. And that's the thing. And because what he vowed to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob will come to pass. Despite what we do, it's going to come to pass. Very much so. Todah for that. Excellent word. Excellent word.
Thank you.
So just wrapping this up, you know, going back to the words of our master, I will go back to there, looking at 29 through 42. You know, Yahushua is just calling us to be mindful of what is before us. We have to always be mindful of what is before us as these days are coming to a head. And the kingdom is approaching. And as the kingdom approaches, it is our responsibility to assure that we're as faithful in this covenant as we can be. That we know what the terms are, right? that we remain faithful to our bridegroom, and we are going about the preparatory steps to meet him at the ceremony, at the wedding fest, which is coming up. It's approaching. This year it is. Is this the last year? We don't know. No man knows the day or the hour. But the thing is, if you're rehearsing and you're prepared and you're in place and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing on that day, there's coverage. And that's the beauty of these feast days. That's the beauty of Yah's appointed times. They're putting you in place for Yah to work with you and for you. He can't cover you if you're not in place. There's nothing Yah can do outside of the covenant if you're not in it. And this is why Yah has given us these signs. These signs are important, but now once we have the sign, we have to go about carrying out our responsibility, knowing that Yah is sovereign. The signs are here. We know the signs. The mother is about us. Jerusalem is about us, and her ways are about us. But what has been the problem with our ancestors, as has been the problem with us, we have not kept the ways of our Father and our King and our bridegroom. We have not been faithful to the covenant. We've served other mighty ones. We've invoked other kings. We've invoked other gods. We've kept their ways. But this is why repentance is so necessary. This is why annulling those vows that we've made to these other gods is so essential. But we have to be wholehearted. And that's the key. Serve Yah with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. That's what Yah is telling us to do. For there is atonement. Praise Yah.
Hey, sir, you remember this was earlier on this year. You had made reference to the ark being the Torah.
Say that one more time.
I remember this was early on this year. You remember you said you just kind of hinted on Noah, and you remember you said that Noah entered into the ark, and that oh man, what was it? I had wrote it down somewhere too. But the ark represented the Torah.
In a way, yes, in a sense, because it's our protecting covering. It's our protection.
It's our protection.
Right. The Torah is what keeps us covered. It's what keeps us in the providence of Yah. Once we're in Yah's providence, in his will, we're able to experience the blessings and the bounties that Yah has for us.
Okay, yep. I remember that you were saying something about that. This was a while back, but you had made reference to that. And I remember telling someone that, that's almost sort of like, entering into the Torah, coming into.
Undeniably.
Yeah,
Undeniably.
Said that, yep.
Undeniably. And that, the instructions of Yah, when you go like to Proverbs and you read about the instructions, they're not only healing, they're protective, they're protective in nature first. And that's what the Torah does. It first protects you so that you don't have to go through a healing process. Yah's will, we've talked about this before, Yah's will is not healing. Yah's will is perfect health. So if you're keeping Torah, you're covered. So yeah, it serves as that ark. It does definitely serve as that ark.
I remember you were saying something about that. Well, I wrote it down too, and I was like, man, I never heard that put that way before, and I remember that.
And see, this is what the world has to know. The world has to know what season it is, and this is what Yah has given us, because this chapter goes and tells us we know the season, right? Blessed is the servant whom the master, having come, shall find so doing. What is he doing? He's prepared for the return of his master. All right, so we are able to know that it says when the fig tree starts to bear fruit, you know summer is near. Well, we see all these signs before us, right? Wherever the dead body is, there the eagles are gathered. Learn the parable from the fig tree. When its branches already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that the summer is near. So we don't know the day or the hour, but we know the seasons that Yah moves in. This is the season that Yah is going to move in. This is a season of judgment that we're entering right now. And salvation. This is a season of judgment and salvation, just like Passover. Passover is a season, and the festival of unleavened bread is a season of judgment and salvation. Judgment, we remember the Egyptians who were judged and sentenced to death. Salvation, we remember Israel who was delivered and brought through the flood. But now we're entering to the true day of judgment. Yom Kippur is the true day of judgment when everyone's name will be either written in the book of life or removed. And you will either be brought into the wedding feast, in the ingathering festival, or you will be outside where there's weeping, wailing, and gnashing of teeth. Brother Kim, yes, sir.
I know you're probably getting tired of me raising my hand, but
No, I'm not at all. I love it.
hey, you know that part where it said, learn in 32, where it says, and learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branches has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that the summer is near.
Mm-hmm.
That part when it said, when the branches has already become tender and put forth its leaves. You know, I noticed something about scripture, that they have one meaning, but that meaning can be so broad and it can cover so many different things, but a lot of it is steeped in prophecy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could that be that precept to that scripture that says, in the land of that captivity, they will come to rethink themselves and turn back to the Most High? What is that in, what scripture is that? In the land of that captivity, they will come to rethink themselves. I'm trying to remember.
That Deuteronomy 4? You talking about 4? I'm thinking all their distress, all these words will come back to their heart. That's what I'm thinking about.
No, there's one of the, I think it's
the prophet.
Yeah, it said in the land of their captivity, they will come to something about rethink themselves, right? And then there's another precept that goes to that. It says, in those latter days, he will pour out his spirit among all flesh.
That's
right?
Joel. That's the book of Joel there.
That's the book of Joel there, right? Right. But the thing about it is that tender moment. I'm thinking, so it's kind of like this movement is kind of young. It's like moving though, is waking up. I call it the Great Awakening, right?
Okay.
The great exodus out of ignorance is what I'm starting to call it. You understand? But this awakening is taking place, right? All over the planet. You know, you got these major camps like Israel United in Christ, you got HOI, you got Sakari, but you got a lot of these camps that are waking up. A lot of people are waking up and they're coming out, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the harvest is being gathered.
Right.
It's almost like the harvest is being gathered. But this part right here, when it said, when its branches has already become tender and puts forth its leaves, it's almost like it's about to start to bloom, right? Knowing something, if you ever looked at a tree when it has little young buds on it. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? So I kind of liken that. I'm asking, I guess, is that likened unto Israel coming back to rethink themselves? Is this that part? Is this sort of that part of that precept to that prophecy?
I can see that, definitely. I can see that. You know, and what he's also doing is just giving us, you know, a setting about what is taking place around us as well. So yes, there is an awakening that's taking place, right? Because he tells us first, let no one deceive you, right? When does this all take place? Take heed, verse 4, no one leads you astray. So this awakening is about us not being led astray anymore, very much so. But we have to start seeing these signs, the causes of this effect, right? That is coming to the earth. So when we start to see these things and put them together, right? And you talk about, what is it, verse 32, well, everything is coming together, right? It has to be the right season. It has to be the right temperature. It has to be the right amount of elements present for the fig tree to start bearing fruit. Then you know the summer's near. So all this goes into it, very much so. Yes, sir. Indeed, indeed.
It's in the book. I'm sorry, sir. I looked it up. It's in the book of Baruch.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's in the book of Baruch. It says, it's Baruch.
What chapter?
Hold on a minute. Baruch. I just seen it. Oh man, I just seen it. They have changed the land, and they would. Oh man, I just seen it. Hold on. Good Lord. Oh, there we go. Here we go. Baruch chapter 2 and 30.
2 and 30?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
You got it.
I know that they will not obey me, for they are stiff-necked people, but in the land of their exile, they will have a change of heart.
Yeah.
And know that I am Yah, the Elohim. I will give them a heart that obeys and ears that hear. They will praise me in the land of their exile now and will remember my name.
There you go.
And turn from their stubbornness and their wicked deeds, for they will remember their ways, the ways of their ancestors who sinned before Yah. I will bring them again into the land that I swore to give to their ancestors, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They will rule over it, and I will increase them, and they will not be diminished. I will make an everlasting covenant with them to be their El, and they shall be my people, and I will never again remove my people from Israel, from the land that I gave.
See that? See that right there?
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
That's it. I think that's a great conclusion, honestly, right there, because we have to understand there's an objective to all of this. And the objective to this all is for us to receive the inheritance that Yah has promised to our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That includes rulership. That includes so it includes having prosperity, rulership, prosperity, and being Yah's image and likeness on earth, reflecting Yah's image on earth. That's the national reality and mission of Israel, to have dominion, right? To reign on earth, to reflect Yah's image, and let me put it in the right order, to reflect Yah's image, to reproduce, and then to reign. Those are the threefold purposes that we have as Israel, as a kingdom of priests and a set-apart nation. That's what we're called to do. And this here captures that. So thank you for bringing that up. Any closing thoughts? Any last reflections before we go ahead with the Aleinu?
I don't have a reflection, but I do have just one question. I know we trying to close out, but
No, go ahead, Imam.
It's been kind of nagging at me.
Okay.
And I think it's in the 24th chapter of Matthew. I'm not sure, but where Yahshua said he led captivity captive. Was that the fact that he went and retrieved the people that were in the captives that were in Abraham's bosom? It was.
That's deep.
So here it is. This is from Ephesians 4. It says, to each one of us, favor was given according to the measure of the gift of Messiah. That is why it says, when he went up on high, he led captivity captive and gave gifts to men. But what does he went up mean, except that he also first went down into the lower parts of the earth? He who went down is also the one who went up far above all the heavens to fill all. So yes, this is about setting the captives free. So when you go to Matthew 28.
28, okay.
when you go to Matthew 28 and you see this resurrection, I'm sorry, 27, Matthew 27, 52 and 53, and you see that when Yahushua rose, and see the veil of the dwelling place was torn in two from top to bottom, the earth was shaken, and the rocks were split, and the tombs were open, and many bodies of the set apart ones who had fallen asleep were raised, and coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the set apart city and appeared to many. So this is how he did that. Yes. He had to descend in order to
I'm
ascend.
so glad. I am so glad because I figure I ain't that crazy. But I thank y'all. Thank you, Moray. Thank you. Told out, Moray.
Hallelujah. Indeed. And these are the souls in Revelation, I believe, chapter 6, that you see under the altar that are like, how long, Master? Like, when are you going to judge these damn heathens that have done all this bloodshed on earth? Just paraphrasing. Yeah.
Yeah, that was Pat.
Yeah. Is it 6 or is it 5? Where is it at? There it is. And he opened the fifth seal, and I saw under the altar the beings of those having been slain for the word of Elohim and for the witness which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, how long, O Master, set apart and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? So these are some of those as well.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I know they had to come out of there some kind of way.
Yep, that's the barley harvest.
Okay.
That's the barley harvest. Told out for that. Anyone else? All right, we'll go ahead and close out with this prayer. Brothers, come over here. All right, if you are able to stand and face Jerusalem, face to the east, please do so. This is called the standing prayer as well. The Aleinu is a standing prayer. And it starts out as we rise to our duty. That's what Aleinu means. So in the spirit of prayer, hallelujah. Aleinu l'shabeach le'adon hakol, la'tet gedula la'yetzeh breshit, she'lo sanu kegoy haratzot, ve'lo samanu b'mishpachot hadamah, shalo sam ha'chenu kahim, ve'gor aleinu k'kol hamonam, ve'anachnu korim, u'mishtachoim u'modim, לפני מלך מלכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויסוד ארץ, ומשוב יקראו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת עוזו בגבוהי מרומים, ואלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס דולתו, הכתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשובותה לבבך, כי יהוה הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. אל כן נחווה לך יהוה אלוהינו לראות מהרה בתפארת עוזך, להעביר גוללים מן הארץ והללים כרוד יכרתון, ותכן ילם במלכות שדי וכל בני בשר יקראו בשמך, והפונות אל כי כורשי ארץ, יכירו ויודעו כל יושבי תבוא, כי לך תקרא כל ברק תשבע כל לשון, לפניך יהוה אלוהינו יקראו ויפעלו, ולכבוד שמך יקר יתנו, ויקבלו כל עם אל מלכותך, ותמלוך אליהם מהרה לעולם ועד, כי המלכות שלך היא. ולעולמי תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, וחי יהוה למלך כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה יהוה אחד, ושמו אחד. יברכך יהוה וישמרך, יאר יהוה פניו עליך ויחונך. Yeshayahu panav alecha v'yisim lecha shalom b'shem Mashiyach Yahushua Baruch Hashem. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Amen, amen, hallelujah. Much love to you all. Praise Yah for this Shabbat.